It was about 4 decades ago when I was studying for my bachelor's degree in English literature. And at that time, I had no idea whatsoever of being a midwife. That was a profession that belonged, I thought, to the long-distant past. So here I was living in a mobile home park. My next-door neighbors were a couple having their first baby. She was about that tall. He was 6'5". And at the end of her pregnancy, she's out to here. There were no pictures in those days, no books that had anything to show you. I thought, how could that possibly get out of her? So she goes to her prenatal visit. She always stopped in and told me what she was going to do. She comes home holding her baby. I said, what happened? She said, he thought he should examine me, put me into labor, and 20 minutes later, the baby's in my arms. I couldn't even get my socks off. They got all wet. I thought, well, this made me think of my aunt who raised horses on an Iowa farm, and she happened to tell me that horses typically had 20 minutes labor. I thought, here's a woman showing me that it's possible for a human to give birth as efficiently as a horse. Wow, okay. Now, that made me think of a book I checked out of the library, no pictures in it now, because this was in the 50s. I checked out this book, Childbirth Without Fear. You can still get this book, written by an English doctor named Grantley Dick Reed. The main idea of the book was that unbearable labor pain was almost always associated with fear. Fear and lack of good preparation during pregnancy, and perhaps lack of understanding care during labor. I'm going to come back now to quick labors, okay, because I found myself in a school bus. Somebody was giving birth, wanted me to be there. So I go in, and she has the baby in 2 hours, looking wildly beautiful. That was the astonishing thing. Wow. And later, when I had a chance to talk to lots of doctors and nurses, I found out how rare that was, that your first glimpse of birth was this wild beauty. They didn't often see that. In fact, I never met anybody who saw that the first time unless they lived on a farm and saw it in an animal, okay? Now, in 1971, made connection with a wonderful family physician in Tennessee who lived in a nearby town and who had had 16 years of experience helping old order Amish. That's horse and buggy, no electricity, no running water, no birth control. And I recruited some partners to work with me because I needed midwives too, and he served as our mentor for more than a decade. Now, we worked together, and it wasn't long before, of course, I saw a lot of women had longer labors than those I've described, myself included. So here we had things that we learned helped. Okay, here are some things. Get out of bed, walk around, maybe dance, take a nap. What could be wrong with that? Eat something sometimes, if it's been a long time, drink something. Here's one. Why would that work? Try it, maybe you'll see. Smooching with your partner. Now you have to, enjoy that, yeah. But down goes the pain, the blood goes, yeah, because the body has to open, okay? Then it wasn't long before I noticed, okay, that size didn't seem to have a lot to do with it. Size of baby, or even size of woman. Great big baby could be born fast. Small baby could take a day or two. Now remember, we're taking naps, eating, and checking the heartbeat all the time, okay? So here we go with before long, I noticed that labor could be well established, the uterus could be opening, the cervix opening, and then things could come to a halt. Okay, now what do we do then? Well, I found out sometimes words could help, but it had to be the right words. It had to be something strong and relevant to that woman. But usually what would happen would be that would happen when a woman got really scared in a moment. and maybe she had a rough examination. I saw that happen a time or two. Or maybe she just didn't have a calm enough atmosphere. So we kind of learned ways to work with that stuff because, again, we had to say the body has to open. When I learned this thing from the doctors and nurses was that there's a very broad range of human experience in birth. And I was privileged to see one end of that spectrum, okay? But I think we have to look at the whole thing, ideally. Now, all of this makes more sense now when we consider hormones. And hormones that work in birth are dependent upon the emotional state of the mother. Now, ideally, she feels secure. It's kind of private. Lights might need to be kind of low because when she's dilating, her pupils are dilating. And dilated pupils, we know, don't like bright lights. So here we go with labor, and she's dilating along, and then if she gets really scared, I found out some things that could help with that. Sometimes humor. I already mentioned those other things, but humor, it makes her laugh. Now, puns don't work. You might have to get a bit gross, and you have to know her. It's going to be sort of bottomy stuff, okay? This helped. This woman in the picture, a doctor is being born here. A doctor licensed in the state of California actually is being born here. And I knew that Mom would win the contest, therefore I could ask her to do that. It worked really well. Intense labor going on. This woman had been dancing and doing, the figure eights. And here she's rolling back and forth. Now that's going to bring the baby down, and she's playing. This is like surfing, okay? And then we can, go there, unmedicated, okay? Now, how do we lose so much? How do we forget? Well, it's because they think we don't talk enough about the emotional state of the mother. And as I said, we want the oxytocin to go up because that's the one the body releases when the mom feels secure, she's not afraid, and it makes feelings of love. Feelings of love can actually make oxytocin. And with oxytocin comes neuroendorphins, which are opiates, right? That made by the body that can diminish or sometimes erase pain. Wonderful stuff. We don't want fear in the room. But fear can go instantaneously because these chemicals that are made by the body don't have to be metabolized. Now, in our practice, the mother's the boss. We're in her place. So we're kind of doing what she needs done. And each woman can be quite unique. In fact, she could have a very long birth, and then she could have a very short one. She could, every birth is unique, and it's sort of the midwife's job to figure, what does she need this time? Now, Amish women average 12, 13 babies. Sometimes know if they're going to have a long labor, they're going to go to the kitchen and they're going to start making bread, maybe about a dozen loaves because they have a big family, or put up a whole bunch of preserves. Because they're on their feet, it's going to go faster. So we learned stuff from people of old cultures, cultures that have never, succumbed really to the fear. And when I went to Guatemala in the mid-70s, that's when I learned this, what they call Gaskin Maneuver. We could call it something else, but that was a way to put my handle on it so I can tell more about it. Shoulder dystocia is one of the most feared birth complications because the head's born and the shoulders seem caught by the maternal pelvis. Now, the traditional medical way that I was taught was deep cut of the mother's vagina first. Then in go the hands. We're trying to, in big masculine hands quite often, trying to turn that baby. And if those measures failed, break the baby's collarbone. Never had to do that. Went to Guatemala and learned a simple traditional midwifery way, which was get the mom off her back, bring her forward to her hands and knees, and almost always the baby will come out with no damage to the baby or the mother, so smooth. Why? Because the mother's pelvis opens when she goes in that forward position. Here we have some wisdom that comes from Mexico. And these are unlettered midwives, okay, that have this. This is centuries old. This is called a rebozo. You can't see how long that shawl is, but it's the one you can tie the baby to your back, so forth. And here they're using it to prevent postpartum depression. They're closing the body. This is the ceremony of cerrada, okay? You can also use that same piece of cloth, and it can change the baby's position, literally change the baby's position, because you use it sort of like a hammock and do this little motion, then you can get the baby to roll around in the mom to a more favorable position. 1970, when I began, the C-section rate was a little more than 5%. It was rare to know anybody who had had one, but look how high that instrumental, and that was mostly forceps at that time, 2/3. I was one of those, part of why I'm here. In those days, it was impossible really to advance a theory that I'm hearing a lot these days, which is that bipedalism is the cause of difficult birth. What do we mean by bipedalism? We walk on 2 legs. The only primate that does that. And supposedly, according to this theory, nature couldn't figure out how to make a pelvis suitable for walking that would let our colossal brain newborns come out. Well, let's see how the C-section rate goes up here. Ours was always less than 3%. In fact, it was 1% when we were beginning, counting from the first birth I ever saw. So how could me and my partners believe that theory? Because we had no instrumental deliveries before we had those 186 babies. And most of those few C-sections that we had were for reasons other than the size of the baby relative to the mom's pelvis. So now we're up to about 3,000 pregnancies. C-section rate, quite low. Instrumental delivery rate, very low. Maternal mortality, none. Neonatal mortality, short period after birth. We look at the 70s because it was a lung disease of prematurity that we can treat now. You couldn't treat it in the 70s. But our neonatal mortality rate's been quite low and compares favorably. And even though we do take care of women like those older Amish, and we do some breech deliveries too, twins, we always have. Birth scenes. A lot we were working like traditional people because I didn't learn institutionally. Learned by taking care of each woman, learned how unique each woman was, and that she would help show you what she needed in birth. Quite often, I remember when the first time I had a woman pull like that from something above, because when you pull above, you can't tighten up below. Now, we are the only species of mammal that can doubt its capacity to give birth. Think about that. We are the only species of mammal that regards its rear end with contempt. Think of what it does for you. Our butts are so important. Let's celebrate them. So what do we know about birth? Well, it's easy to scare women. It's even profitable to scare women and girls about birth. Think about it. But it's not nice. So let's stop it. Really bad manners. Bad manners. So what can we do to make us less fearful about birth? Well, think about this stuff here. Get a doula. Now, what is a doula? A doula is a labor companion who is non-medical. And usually it's a she, but men can be doulas. I've known of it to happen. But what they're doing is they're keeping a calm atmosphere. This is they'll slow down the pace of breathing. Maybe some humor will be allowed in the room. Maybe a little sexuality, kissing, affection. Let's get the oxytocin level up. This is birth education Peruvian style. It's ancient. We're not allowed to see this. Could you imagine seeing that in a Christian church in the United States? We can hope. This is birth education. This is how people used to know you don't want women to be afraid. So what do we want about birth? We want, ideally, it's going to be good for mom, baby, and daddy if he's there. Women don't want to be scared. So we don't tell the horrible birth stories to the pregnant woman. That's for a therapist, because some of us need to tell those and offload that stuff, okay? So good manners, it's all about good manners. And nobody wants to feel judged about how she did it. So let's not judge. Let's say, give birth a chance. Let's give birth a chance. And to women, I'm always saying, like, remember your sense of humor. Even just a bitty smile is going to help, because that's going to make some neuroendorphin for you. Anything gets easier with a smile. And to women, I always say, your body is not a lemon. Thank you.